So, welcome everyone to another episode. And today we are going to talk about accessibility in the culture world, in museums. And we have with us Sara Menato from Museo Egizio. Thank you for joining us, Sara. And I will be glad if you can introduce yourself and the museum.
Hi, Nir. Thank you very much for having me here. I'm super honored to introduce you the Museo Egizio in Turin, which is the museum where I work. And the museum is set in Turin, and it hosts a super important collection that comes from Egypt, from ancient Egypt. So, as you can understand, on one side, we have the honor of preserving a collection that comes from a completely different place and that came in Turin 200 years ago. So, on the other side, the collection is very integrated within the history of the city of Turin, which is in North Italy, actually. And so people in Turin, and I would say in Italy, feel the Museo Egizio at the same time very much part of the culture of the city, for sure.
Great, thank you. And I've been in Turin a couple of times, but I haven't visited the museum yet. I must go there next time I'm there. But can you describe to me and to the audience what it's like to be in this museum? What do I feel? What do I see when I walk through the museum?
Well, we have the honor of preserving this huge collection of artifacts that come from ancient Egypt. And it's a really, really important collection that make people understand the life and the history of ancient Egypt. At the same time, we try to display them in a way that so that visitors can get in contact with ancient stories about the artifacts, but also about the people that use them, that decided that they wanted to be buried with those artifacts. So we try to get people in contact with the history and with the stories of the people as well, the stories that are behind those objects, which in some cases are also super beautiful from an aesthetic, let's say, perspective.
That was a beautiful time in history. So fascinating things. But I hear when you are saying that the experience of person is to walk into the museum and to see the things and maybe to read the descriptions and the stories around them. Can you? But if I'm a blind person, it might be a problem for me. Or maybe if I have some other disabilities. It can be limiting. Can you describe what are you doing in order to compensate for it or to help the people with disability to still enjoy the collection that you have there?
Well, yeah, we try to work on with the universal design approach. At least we try. We try our best, actually. So the visitor journey is the same for everyone. And we have specific accessibility tools, let's say, available whenever they are needed. So also for people that have disabilities. For example, deaf visitors can access, for example, the entire content that the museum display thanks to our web app. Where every, let's say, piece of content is available both in the Italian Sign Language and the International Sign. For example, visitors with complex communication needs can rely on a wide range of dedicated tools. And visitors with physical disabilities can independently access all the galleries. This is very, radical, let's say. So if I have to say something, a person with disability can now visit the museum independently, even without assistance, as it's in their right, of course. At the same time, regarding the people that are blind, as you said, there is, let's say, we have different tools, but I want to say very clearly that there is still a great deal of improvement needed, because we need to make their experience smoother, for sure, more intuitive, and I would say less time consuming. I would say that now in 2026, the radical, let's say, accessibility for blind people, for blind visitors, is our top priority, because we are trying to experience the best solution to allow them to visit the museum independently, which is, and that I would say is our main problem, to effectively support their orientation and navigation through the galleries, because we do provide for blind people tools through which they can touch some reproductions, and they can we accord it to some audio that describes the artifacts. At the same time, we have many artifacts that can be touched by people with visual impairments. So the experience is quite full. And also we have orientation tools for every floor of the museum. But so I would say that the experience is full, and you can really get into the stories of the ancient Egypt. What is something we still need to work on is how we bring blind people from, let's say, place A to place B to place C, because it's quite, the orientation within the museum is quite hard for every visitor, I would say. And we are trying to explore the best way using digital tools or physical ones. We're still studying it to orientate blind people when they are alone, which, as we said, it's totally their right to be.
I think, first of all, you're doing amazing things. And I think what you're describing here is something that we constantly see in accessibility, is that accessibility is not a one-time project. Is every time you do the audio tour and you understand, okay, but maybe also we need to do something about the physical artifact. So you do these ways to, but then you say, okay, but now we need to improve the orientation. And it's something that you keep improving, and I think that it's great. It's like, it's a journey. Like, it's not something that you, but I think it's, by the way, similar to the fact that for anyone, for sighted people, you constantly try to improve the experience and to make it more fluent and easy. So I think it's great.
Yeah, in a way, if you want, it's really the process of a startup. The idea of, there is some literature. Of course, you need to have in mind exactly the rules, let's say, and some principles that are established. But at the same time, you need to put those rules, those principles into the practice. And at least for our experience, it has been an experience of try, error, and then readjustment, and then with the idea of opening up the experience and bringing the best experience possible, smoother, easier, and less time consuming. And I'm sure, as you said, that it's a long process, and I think it's a never ending process.
Exactly.
Because, it's about the needs of the people, and the needs are different for everyone.
One important thing you just said is that there are guidelines and things that you can read, But at the end of the day, you need people to give you feedback, people to actually tell you what they experience and how does it work. And one of the tools to do it is to do user testings. And some time ago, we did together. Accessiway did with the Museo Egizio the user testing. And I will be glad if you can share a little bit of what was it, how was it like for you, and what did you learn maybe from this experience?
Definitely. During 2024, Museo Egizio, during 1 year, let's say, plus the study part, which was before, we implemented all the tools that would help people with disabilities to leave the museum independently, because we had tools, guided tours for different disabilities since years, I would say since the 90s. But we didn't have till that moment tools for the independent visit, which was so important. And we could do it thanks to the huge grant that we received from the the National Recovery and Resilience Plan. So in 1 year, very quickly, we provided and we designed, but we also put into practice. We actually built all the tools. But the user tests were not actually done. We did, of course, we worked with the associations. We made some little tests in order to build actually the instruments, let's say. But then we didn't have a full experience tested. So that's why we worked together to do that between the end of 2025 and the beginning of 2026. We were, it was super interesting because we were expecting, of course, feedbacks. We knew that there were a lot of stuff that didn't work. But if you want, we tested the different disabilities, so the different tours that people with different needs could actually do. It was a test that involved around 10 people. And what was, super interesting is the things that we didn't expect to be revealed, let's say, because honestly, we were quite confident regarding physical accessibility. Instead, we discovered something which I find super interesting. The idea that there is a huge difference between complying with the accessibility regulations, as you
Yes.
said, and having a museum which is genuinely and fully accessible in the actual practice. So the user tests helped us identifying several aspects that need improvement, and we are working on them. Because we found, by the law, we are fully accessible, even for, of course, physical access needed, physical needs for accessibility. But then, in the shadows, let's say, we found that we are not in a proper and fully way. And that, I think, it's the most interesting part. Then, of course, there are other parts that we kind of knew before. For example, the idea that our audio, going back to the people with visual impairments, the audio that starts when you are touching an artifact, they are a little bit too long. You have to imagine that we have a lot of things to tell to our visitors, and we wanted to make them do a full experience. We will need at one point to reduce the length of the audios. That was very clear from the user tests as well.
I think that you are touching a super important point about accessibility in general, that there is a difference between compliance. It's a different layer. Everyone starts from compliance, but after a while, you understand that, yes, it did unblock the major barriers, but that there is a big difference between that and a good experience. A good experience is a layer on top of compliance, and the way to find it and understand it is to do it with real people and ask them, what do you feel? What do you experience? And this is what user testings are for. I wanted to ask you, I think, the one last thing, and this is, I know that other museums are also dealing with accessibility. Some of them may be in more advanced phase and are inspiration for you, but some of them are maybe in a less advanced phase and you are inspiration for them. So I'll be glad to hear from you, both of them, like which museums maybe do you know that are doing it amazing and you look and you want to be like them, but also if I'm a different museum and I don't know where to start or how to do it right, what you would recommend me to do?
Yes, of course, we look at museums that started before us to think in an accessible way. If I have to say a name, I would say that the Rijksmuseum is really such a good practice that we always look at them. We try to copy them as much as we can with less money, of course, less people, but they are really an inspiration for the Museo Egizio for sure, and for all the museums that really want to be for the people. That's the idea. And of course, with different, in different country, and but they are really, really interesting to study and to try to find from them inspiration. At the same time, yes, during the last year, we built a network of professionals that actually came to the Museo Egizio for some classes that we did with the Scuola del Patrimonio. So we were able to build a wide, let's say, network of people, and we exchanged with them a lot of, we talked a lot together, and we found, of course, we knew, because yes, I'm happy to mention also an Italian museum that is great for accessibility, which is the Museo in Trento. We are talking with them regularly because we can, for some parts of the process, they are much more advanced than us, and we are trying actually to get from them inspiration and practices that we can bring to the Museo Egizio, and for other parts of our work. For the interpretation, for example, the Museo Egizio is more, let's say, ahead in this way. So we it's a mutual exchange. And if there is a professional, a museum, a director that have to start this process, which is something every museum should embrace, because actually, the definition of museum is very clear. We are here for the people. We can't avoid that, and it's our. We must tackle the accessibility. I would say to think about the museum as a whole, and to think that the museum needs to become accessible, rather than thinking about only the single and individual tools. That's, I would say, that is the shift that need to be done in order to make a good project, let's say. It's a cultural shift which has to, at the same time, embrace everyone. So from exhibition design to communication, to pricing as well, because we didn't talk about it, but there's also the accessibility in terms of the idea of being accessible to people that can't afford to pay the tickets. I would say that the training is super important. And we did it together as well, because also these, I feel like it's a continuous learning path. The idea of having staff training very regularly and to be sure that everyone is on board with the objective. And then I would suggest also to build networks, share experiences. As we mentioned at Museo Egizio, we are always happy to exchange ideas with colleagues, and because really every conversation brings new perspective, and we found that the collaboration is one of the most effective ways to make meaningful progresses in accessibility. So we are very happy to hear from others and to work together, let's say, in this path.
Yeah, I think, it's one thing that I love about the domain of accessibility. Usually competitors are things that we don't want to copy them, but we don't want to share with them. But when it comes to accessibility, do copy your competitors, do share with them, and you see it all over. When you ask for help, people offer the help. When you ask for, whatever question, people are always willing to answer, and sharing the knowledge make everything better for everyone. And I think this is part of the beauty of accessibility. And you are doing super important work over there. I agree with you, making culture approachable and accessible for anyone. This is what we need to do as humanity and as a culture, and your work is super important. So I want to thank you so much for your time and for your work, and I promise to come visit the museum as soon as possible and to experience a lot of this myself. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you, Nir. It has been my pleasure, and you, as everyone, is always super welcome.
Thank you.